I think that the more that kids understand that we are just sort of like a speck in this gigantic universe and even in this gigantic solar system, the more that they can feel the sense of awe that we even exist. Like, it's a coincidence. It's a coincidence that our planet is the perfect distance from the sun for so much of evolution to happen over so many years that human beings can even exist, and to just really be humble and grateful about our existence and to treasure everything else that our Earth is, and to understand the critical importance of protecting it and protecting as many other creatures as we can.
Hey everyone, I'm Bianca Schulze, founder of the Children's Book Review, and this is the Growing Readers podcast. Today's special guest joining us is someone who has dedicated her career to making the wonders of science accessible and awe-inspiring for young readers. Melissa Stewart is the award-winning author of more than 200 science books for children. She holds degrees in biology and science journalism, and her recent works include Summertime Sleepers, Animals That Estivate, Seashells, More Than a Home, Feathers, Not Just for Flying, and The Beautiful Whale Fall, Exploring an Ocean Floor Ecosystem. In today's conversation, we'll be diving into Melissa's latest book, From Bam to Burp, A Carbon Atom's Never-Ending Journey Through Space and Time and You, which takes readers on a billion-year journey from the Big Bang to a third grader's breakfast burp. But more than that, we'll explore what drives Melissa to help children see themselves as part of the larger natural world, why she believes curiosity is something we must nurture and protect, and how even the simplest questions from kids can lead to the most extraordinary discoveries. This is a conversation about wonder, responsibility, and the beautiful reminder that we're all just specks in this gigantic universe, and how incredibly lucky we are to be here. So get ready to think about carbon atoms in a whole new way. And before we welcome Melissa Stewart to the show, here's the synopsis for From Bam to Burp, A Carbon Atom's Never-Ending Journey Through Space and Time and You. Follow a carbon atom on its incredible adventure over billions of years. It's been part of many things, from early volcanic gases to plants that dinosaurs devoured to your breakfast burp. By award-winning children's author Melissa Stewart, this epic non-fiction picture book is a perfect blend of science and history that STEM seekers will eat up. Long ago, the young Earth crashed into a smaller body called Theia. Matter blasted through space, and the carbon atom was trapped deep inside Earth until a volcano erupted, thrusting tons of ash and gases, including the carbon atom, high into the sky. Over millions of years, the carbon atom has been part of all kinds of things, including plants and dinosaurs, eggshells and seashells, a lump of coal, and even a sheet of toilet paper. Not long ago, it became part of a towering maple tree and then a drop of maple syrup. Just imagine that the syrup ended up on your pancakes and then inside your body. And when you let out a deep breath, the carbon left your lungs, met up with a blast of gas from your stomach, and burp. You never know where a carbon atom will go next. Get ready to take off on a wild ride from Bam to Burp. Well, hello, Melissa Stewart. Welcome to the Growing Readers podcast. I'm so glad you're here today.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I love to warm up with some rapid fire questions lately because I feel like it's kind of just a fun way to get the conversation going and just to get to know you a little bit. So a really simple one today, coffee or tea when you're writing in the morning?
Tea, 100%.
A specific flavor of tea?
Just black tea.
Awesome. What's the weirdest place you've ever found inspiration for a book idea?
Inside a tree.
Whoa. Okay, like I know I said rapid fire, but I need to just know a little more about that.
So I have a book called Tree Hole Homes, which is about animals that live in trees, and it includes the normal animals you would expect, like birds and owls and squirrels, but also animals from all over the world. And the inspiration for that book came when I was visiting my brother-in-law who lives in Vancouver Island. And we went and we saw this forest with really old giant trees. And there was one with a tree hole big enough for me to slip inside. And so I did. And my brother-in-law, who's kind of a goofball, took a photo of that moment. And while I was in that tree, I looked up inside and it made me really curious about what animals might live in a tree. And so that's the origin of that book.
I love that, as that's the perfect example of just staying open and curious to what's around you because we're surrounded by ideas all the time. I love that. Well, if you could follow any element on a journey besides carbon, which one would you pick?
Oh, good. Oxygen.
Pancakes or waffles for that maple syrup that we see in your latest book?
Both.
Oh, I like that. On the same plate?
Probably not on the same plate, but I love them both.
Okay, and then this one might be my favorite, and it's the last rapid fire for today. Burps or farts? Which ones interest you most from a scientific perspective?
Oh, you know what? Once again, I'm going to have to go with both. I've written books about both. And I think kids are just so curious about both, and they're a little forbidden. They're great fodder for a book.
Yeah, I love that. All right. Well, what's one thing, and go long here if you want, what is one thing you do in your day-to-day practices that you feel would be either the most surprising or the most relatable to listeners?
Maybe that I start working really early in the morning, right when I get up, 5 o'clock, and I don't stop to take a shower or eat breakfast until I get stuck, because I find that the shower is a really good way to get unstuck. It's one of those times when you don't have something specific that you need to be thinking about. And so the little solutions that have been kind of percolating in your subconscious for who knows how long, they kind of just rise to the surface. And so it's not unusual for me to hop out of the shower and run over to my office, which is right across the hall, and just scribble down ideas even when I'm soaking wet. So I kind of use the shower as a writing technique.
I love that. I love that. There's something peaceful, or like you've got no other distractions when you're in there. So yeah, that's great. Well, you've written over 150, I believe, science books for children. So what is it that drives you and guides you in creating these books for kids?
I think really just the beauty and wonder of the natural world, that I just really want to share it with kids, and I want to get them invested in spending time outdoors in nature, because I think it's just really, it's a place of tranquility, which is something that we need more than ever in this busy world. And I always say that sort of the mission of my writing is to just make kids curious. And if one of my books can inspire a child to chase after a butterfly, to see where it's going, or look under a rock, then my job is done.
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel as though the climate of the world right now is on a little bit of a downer. And I think it's important to keep the wonder and the curiosity going. And so on that note, is there anything in science that is kind of exciting you right now that you feel like you want to share with kids? Because I know climate change is so important and we need to talk about it and whatnot. But I'm just wondering if there's something new or fresh or exciting, or even something that maybe has been talked about in the past but hasn't been talked about for a while. Like, what's something exciting? I feel like I need some more hope and excitement right now.
I think for me, really just going out into nature and spending time just romping around an open field or exploring a new forest, there's always something that surprises me. Whenever I go into nature, I discover something new that I've never noticed before. Maybe it's something specific to that place, but then maybe it's just a place I've been to many times, but I haven't noticed before. My husband and I this summer created sort of a goal for ourselves to walk the entire length of a rail trail that is here in Massachusetts where I live. We had been to several different sections of it, but we had never walked the entire thing. And so that was exciting to sort of see how the different pieces that we knew and loved fit together, and then to explore the parts that we didn't know and to sort of say to ourselves, okay, what are our favorite places? What make them our favorite places? Would we ever do this again? So we had we sort of set this goal for ourselves, and it allowed us to see this rail trail that we had known in one way for quite a while, to see it in a whole new way. So I think looking at things through a new lens, or like forcing yourself to look at things in a new way, is always a source of inspiration.
Yeah. And like you said before, too, just those moments of there's the rock, but what do we see when we turn over the rock or we look at that rock with a magnifying glass? Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, after reading your author's note in the back of your latest book, I knew instantly that I wanted to ask you to share that aha moment when you realized that From Bam to Burp could be a children's book. And I know it stemmed from one third grader's question that led you to knowing this. So will you share that story with us?
Sure. The Bam to Burp, the subtitle is the longest subtitle in the world. It's A Carbon Atom's Never-Ending Journey Through Space and Time and You. And the book basically looks at the journey of a carbon atom through time, through lots of different plants and animals, a volcano, all the different places that it went. But the origin story for that, which is what you're talking about, I was on a school visit in 2016, and a third grader, just out of the blue, this was not what I was talking about at all, just shot up their hand. And he said, "Is it true that an atom that is inside my body right now could have been inside a dinosaur 150 million years ago?" And I said, "Absolutely." And I said, "Not only is it possible, it is almost certain that one of the many, many atoms in your body was once in a dinosaur, because they lived over 150 million years, from about 240 million years ago to about 66 million years ago. And there were billions of them, billions and billions. That's way longer than humans have lived on Earth." And so then he started just rapid firing all these questions. I had really ignited his imagination, and he asked me all these questions, probing deeper, that I could not answer in that moment. And I said, this is a great thing for you to try to do more research about, because I'm sorry, I can't answer all your questions. But it also made me curious. And I went home and I started to do that research. And that's what eventually led to this book.
Well, let's talk more about that fabulous title. And I'm just going to go with kind of the main title, From Bam to Burp. So, like, how did you come up with such a playful way to frame this pretty much epic story of a carbon atom's journey? So, how did you just kind of settle on that title? Because it does perfectly frame what the entire journey is in your book.
The title really came later in the process. So initially, I gave myself the challenge of, could I trace a potential journey of a carbon atom through space and time? And so I'm like, okay, so now it's over in China and it's inside a panda. And now it's going into a lump of coal. And so I had this whole journey. But the problem was it was very long because we're talking about billions of years. And it was kind of repetitive because carbon atoms tend to mostly go through plants and animals. And so the way that they get into a plant is always the same. And the way they get into an animal is always the same. And so to just keep repeating that over many, many years, it just wasn't working. And so what eventually happened is I took a course with master nonfiction author Candace Fleming, who was talking about sequence text structures and the importance of collapsing time and really focusing in on what you want to highlight from. She was talking about picture book biographies. So she was talking about a person's life, but it's the same idea. How am I going to really? So I'm not going to tell the entire journey, everything that carbon atom has been part of in sequential order. There are certain points where I collapse time and I say, okay, over time, it could have been in a seashell. It could have been in a pumpkin. It could have been in a roll of toilet paper. And I show that part of the journey just all collapsed on one spread. And so that's how I was able to make it fit within the confines of a picture book. And in terms of getting to those words like bam and burp and whoosh and kaboom, at one point I was trying to do a graphic novel version of this. And so then you often will have those little automato poetic words as part of the drawings. And so the graphic novel or the graphic nonfiction version of it didn't really work, but I held on to those fun sound effect words. And eventually they became the title.
Yeah, it's so fun. And I do love those words that kind of just like pop and break up the text as well. I'm so curious now. So how long did this story stay with you? When did you start it and until it became like the published book that we're holding now?
Yeah, so the incident with that third grader, that was 2016. And so the book is coming out next month in October. So it's a long time.
Yeah.
9
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always like, it's always so fascinating, the process from idea all the way through to that published book, because I've said it on this podcast before, when as a reader, when we're holding that book, it's easy to just see it as this gorgeous finished product. And it was probably really easy for Melissa Stewart to just whip it out, but to know how much thought and insight and research goes in. And I'm always so fascinated by that. But I want to talk about the beginning of this nonfiction story that you've created, because it begins with some pretty intense cosmic action. So do you want to talk a little bit just about the beginning of your carbon story? And also, how do you decide when you have the dramatic realities of science combined with age-appropriate storytelling all balanced? So obviously you said you went from maybe thinking this could be a graphic novel, and that's could be for an older audience where it could be even more intense. So anyway, tell us about the beginning of the story and that sort of cosmic happening, and then how you work towards finding that beautiful balance of, I guess, picture book storytelling.
Yeah. So originally I was thinking of starting it with the Big Bang, but then you're really going back a very, very long time and you're going very, very far away. And I really wanted this to be an Earth focused story. And I wasn't really sure how to do that until I happened to read an article about Theia. So Theia is the name given to the object or minor planet that crashed into Earth billions of years ago, like 4.5-ish billion years ago, and created the moon. So this object crashed into Earth, and some of it globbed onto the Earth and became part of the Earth, and then part of it blasted out into space, and over time, those particles came together and they formed the moon, and then the moon started just spinning around the Earth, rotating around the Earth, orbiting. And so I thought, well, that is a great place to start, because some people do know how the moon formed, but kids might not. And I had never heard the name Theia. I didn't know that object had a name, and I thought people would find that interesting. But most importantly, it was an authentic way to create carbon atoms that would come through space, at least a short distance, come to Earth, and could potentially go down deep into Earth, so that there would be a volcano, because I really wanted volcano to be the first thing that would happen on Earth.
Yeah. I mean, I just love it. So I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, you've written so many scientific based books for kids, lots of nonfiction, and you just talk about it so easily. And I just wonder, like, how does your brain retain so much of this amazing wisdom, and what goes into researching a story like this that does span from volcanic eruptions to the creation of maple syrup? Your brain is so amazing to me, the facts that you're throwing out there. And then I just wonder how you retain it and what goes into your research.
I have a lot of different tools that I use. So, for example, when I was trying to actually have this storyline of all the different places where the carbon had gone over time, I had actually created a big diagram in my office. So I had taped many pieces of 8.5 by 11 paper together. And I put them up on the wall, and I was just trying to draw it all out. And I often will use visual aids when I'm trying to figure out how to structure a book. Sometimes I'll use like a PowerPoint slides to represent the different spreads in a book, or sometimes I'll use index cards, and I'll make index cards for the different animals that are in the book, and then I can physically move them around. Sometimes I'll use Post-it notes, and I'll stick them on the wall, and I'll move them around and try to figure out how to structure the book. So a lot of times I need to see it and kind of feel it with with my hands, and all those help me to be able to think about it in a different way, because sometimes when you just have it on a computer screen, it's very small and condensed, and my brain needs something bigger and more visually representative.
Yeah. Do you like ever go and do field work, for example, to just sort of maybe appease your more tangible learning style? And for something like this, I can't imagine that you could do any kind of field work, but like, what sort of research do you do in terms of getting out into the world to help solve the puzzle of your story?
Yeah, so for this book, I did not do any field work, but for many of my books, I do. I have a book that's coming in the spring called Monarch and Morning Cloak, a butterfly journal. And so for this, the illustrator, Sarah Brannon, actually raised butterflies as she was creating the art. And so she actually went out into the field behind her house and collected butterfly eggs. And we were watching these. But I also went to a lot of the different places where I know that morning cloak butterflies live. That's the other butterfly that's in the book. And you cannot really raise them very easily. And so some of those places I went to myself. Some of them I went to with Sarah, and she took photos that she then used to help her when she was creating the art. But I find that as I was writing the poems in that book, just sitting in that place where I know that those butterflies live and go through the different stages of their life cycle that I was talking about, that gave me some inspiration.
Well, when you were doing your research for From BAM to Burp, was there something really unexpected that you discovered? I mean, or was it things that you already knew and you just had to piece the puzzle together and how you were going to tell the story? I always love it if somebody has came across something that they weren't expecting to come across while researching.
Yeah, so I really wanted to include coal in the story because I wanted a link to fossil fuels that it's a tricky thing when you're talking about the environment and climate change and, what we're doing. Fossil fuels are something that really are necessary for the life that we live right now. As much as we try to go toward alternative energy, we're not there yet. And coal is something that I knew had been used for many, many years all across the world. I wanted to trace back the origins of humans using coal because I wanted whatever was happening with the coal, I wanted it to be as long ago as possible. And so I ended up realizing that 10,000 years ago, people in China were picking up lumps of coal that were just on the surface of the ground and burning them, that was surprising to me that was the origin of using coal.
Yeah, I did not know that. That is pretty fascinating. Sometimes I like science, and I guess I'm lacking like your level of curiosity, because I think I have had these questions in my mind, but then I just let them go, where I have wondered, like, how did people discover that you could burn coal to, make a train go? And, like, I've always wondered that, but I've never actually sat down and explored it. So I love that you do that for us, Melissa.
I think the great thing about being a science writer is it sort of gives me permission to go out and, because you might think, oh, I'm not going to go look that up because maybe it's not something that I would easily find if I just Googled it, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. I have so many other things I have to do in my life. But for me, it's like my job to get answers to these really bizarre questions. And maybe I'm going to work them into a book and maybe I'm not. But the joy of discovery is something that gets to be part of my life every single day.
Yeah. Well, and so the next layer of that too is because you write for kids is like, okay, well, we have these kind of fascinating facts, but how do we, I think there are some kids that are going to gravitate towards science and facts no matter what. But for others, it's all in the delivery of keeping them fascinated and interesting and telling it in a way that they can readily absorb it. And I found that this particular book has such a conversational, almost cheeky tone. And especially with that burp ending, like you said earlier, like those are conversations that kids love getting into. So I think you have such a great voice that speaks directly to kids without talking down to them. So when did you first discover that you had a knack for telling nonfiction stories to kids? And how do you think that your writing voice has evolved since your first published book?
Well, those are some interesting questions. I think that in terms of the evolution of my voice, I think that wanting to tell science, explain science in this way has always been part of me. But when I started writing books about 30 years ago, I wasn't allowed to because the market was so different back then. We just had what is now called traditional nonfiction, which are all about books. So, I have a book all about rocks and minerals, a book all about kangaroos, a book all about the Boston Tea Party. And when you're writing about a broad topic and just giving an introduction, there's so much information that you have to convey that it ends up being a little bit encyclopedic. And 30 years ago, that's what publishers expected. That's what kids expected. That's what teachers expected. And I think it's really been this amazing transformation and evolution that nonfiction has gone through over the last 20 years that has made it possible for books like this to exist. A book like this never would have been acquired 20 years ago because the editors would have said, well, this is not what nonfiction is. And so now there is no rule. Like nonfiction could be anything. And I feel like people are pushing the envelope of what informational books are every single day. In fact, I would call this book informational fiction rather than nonfiction because it has a little carbon atom that's got a face and hands and so that's part of the heart. But also, I don't know for sure that there is an exact carbon atom that ever went on the journey that I'm sharing in this book. This is a possible journey that is completely realistic, but it's not documented that a carbon atom did all these specific things, which is something that I point out in the back matter of the book. And I think informational fiction is fine as long as you're honest with readers and letting them know what you have maybe embellished in order to make the story more engaging, or what sometimes you'll see books that have a character who, so for example, you'll have a book about the moon with lots of facts about the moon, and the moon is the narrator, and in the art, it has the eyes and the hands and the mouth. The narration is the moon talking to you. And so I think books like this are becoming more and more common. And I think it can be an access point for kids who are maybe more narrative driven.
Yeah. Well, since you brought up the carbon atom is an illustrated character in this book. So do you want to talk a little bit about the illustrations? And I know I'm not going to pronounce Marta's last name correctly, so you're going to have to
it's
correct
Marta
me.
Alvarez Minguez. And
Mingus.
she is a Latina illustrator who lives in Spain. And you would think that language barriers might be an issue, but let me tell you, she did such an amazing job with this. And there were a few times when it was clear that she didn't know exactly what something was. So she tried Googling it and she ended up getting something that was just not right. And so then we all had a laugh about that. But she worked really hard and she did a tremendous job getting the science right in this book. And so I'm very grateful for all the effort that she has put in.
Yeah, yeah. It's so fun when you're saying these informational nonfiction, and I think of them also as like creative nonfiction and just having these great illustrations. And I feel like you often get paired with these incredible illustrators, and it just really does help connect with the younger, more visual readers and those kids that really do need to have the visuals in front of them. So I think it turned out so great. Well, since this book connects kind of the cosmic to the personal, from space collisions to a kid's breakfast burp, why do you think it's important for children to see themselves as part of these larger natural processes?
I think it's important for kids and for adults too. I think for everyone to sort of understand that the way that our minds have evolved, it's so easy for us to think that there is some force intending for us to be the center of the world and the center of our existence. But I think that's an illusion. That's a myth. That really we are an animal and there are, I don't know, millions, billions of other animals, other creatures, and we are not better than them. We just have a different way of thinking and maybe more awareness of what's happening. And so I think with that comes a responsibility. And so I think that the more that kids understand that we are just sort of like a speck in this gigantic universe and even in this gigantic solar system, the more that they can kind of feel the sense of awe that we even exist. Like it's a coincidence. It's a coincidence that our planet is the perfect distance from the sun for so much of evolution to happen over so many years that human beings can even exist, and to just really be humble and grateful about our existence and to treasure everything else that our earth is, and to understand the critical importance of protecting it and protecting as many other creatures as we can.
Yeah. And like, honestly, I just want to say end of episode. I mean, that response, Melissa, I mean, that's what we all need to hear. And that was perfect. But it isn't the end of the episode because I have more questions. So I guess if the idea for this book first came to you because of that third grader that asked that brilliant question and kept probing, I want to sort of go deeper on that, because kids do ask the most delightful questions, silly questions, thoughtful questions, absurd questions. So what kinds of questions do you imagine kids will ask about this book? And are there any that you hope that they'll ask?
That's a great question. I hope that what it will encourage them to do is to, like I was saying before, to think about their place in the world and their place in the universe and their place in history. But also, I sort of hope that they might go down a rabbit hole themselves and say, well, where else could a carbon atom have been? Or how might this journey have been differently if it was an oxygen atom or a sulfur atom or some other atom? I hope it will just make them curious and to realize that they can think about the world in many different ways. I just, like we were saying before, I just want kids to embrace their natural curiosity and hold on to it and carry it with them their whole lives. I think that's something that isn't happening enough right now. And if anything we can do to encourage that is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, you said before that you have Monarch and Morning Cloak, which is the butterfly journal coming out. I think it's in March 2026. Now, sometimes we know publishing dates shift, but I believe it's March 2026. Do you have to shift writing gears when going from something like carbon atoms to butterflies, or do they all connect in your mind?
They do all connect in my mind, but promoting a book is not about what's happening in my mind. It's about what's happening in everyone else's mind. And so I think there is shifting that's going on, but the shifting is not necessarily going from carbon atoms to butterflies. It's going from whatever the book is that I'm writing right now to whatever the book is that I need to be promoting. The books that are coming out right now, they have been illustrated. So I write them and then they go to, I send them out on submission. It might take a certain amount of time to sell the book. The book needs to be edited. The art for the book needs to be created. The book needs to be printed. All of those things take years. And so that means that I'm writing a book that will not be published for many years. And that's where I try to keep my headspace, the thing that I'm actually writing right now. But then I do have to come out of that headspace and say, and then I sort of have to remember the excitement that I felt about carbon atoms a while ago, or the excitement that I felt about creating this butterfly journal a while ago. And so even though I'm sort of right in the middle of promoting BAM to Burp right now, we're just starting the promotion for the Monarch book, which is not coming out for 6 months. So there's like a 6-month window of promoting a book. And so sometimes different books will overlap in that way, which can get a little bit crazy, but fun. It's all fun.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple of your books right here that I think have either just came out earlier this year. So just the whale fall exploring an ocean floor ecosystem, which is, just the cover alone is so stunning. And I love that. And learning about the zombie worms that come in and eat. So you had that one. And then there's Meet the Mini Mammals and Night at the Natural History Museum. So
that was my spring book. Yeah. So now I'm in terms of my marketing hat, I'm switching from mini mammals to carbon atoms. But then there are still some mini mammal things going on and will be going on till the end of the year. So I have to kind of switch hats sometimes, but it's all fun. And it also gives an opportunity sometimes for kids to make interesting connections. I'll be interested to see. I haven't started doing school visits yet this school year, but I'll be interested to see what their questions are when I talk about those two books together. They always come up with connections that I could not have even imagined. Kids ask the most amazing questions. And BAM to Burp is not the first time that something a kid has said has led to a book. I think they have a way of seeing the world that is just so precious.
Yeah. Well, if there was just one thing that listeners were to take away from our conversation today, what would you want that to be?
Oh my goodness. I would say in terms of from BAM to Burp, that I would hope that the book would kind of open their eyes to all the different roles that carbon has in our world. That carbon is sometimes a little bit maligned because of its role in climate change and global warming. But the carbon cycle is so critical to life on Earth. Carbon is part of every single animal, every single plant, every single living thing. And so even though it causes trouble in some ways, it also is remarkable and necessary. Life could not exist without it. And so just to think about all the different ways, all the different roles that carbon plays in our world.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing your passion for making the wonders of science accessible to young readers. I have an avid nonfiction reader in my home, a 5th grader who just loves nonfiction. And it's just so clear to me that every book you write comes from a genuine desire to spark that sense of discovery in kids. And your ability to take something as vast as carbon atoms and their billion-year journey and make it feel personal and exciting is really such a gift. And I have no doubt that From Bam to Burp will inspire countless of kids to see themselves as part of the incredible story of our universe. And I think that is so powerful. So, Melissa, thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you. It's been so fun to talk to you.
Thank you so much for joining us on this quest for growing readers. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Melissa Stewart about curiosity, wonder, and the incredible journey of that carbon atom. If you'd like to learn more about Melissa and her work, you can find a link to her website, melissa-stewart.com, in our show notes. There you'll discover teacher resources, videos, and so much more. We've also included links in the show notes to pick up your own copy of From Bam to Burp, The Wild Ride of a Carbon Atom, as well as the other fantastic books we mentioned in today's episode. And before you go, if you enjoyed this episode, we'd be so grateful if you could leave us a review. It really helps other book lovers and curious minds find the show. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep your sense of wonder alive. The Growing Readers podcast is a production of the Children's Book Review. For more awe-inspiring books like From Bam to Burp, I hope you'll visit us at thechildrensbookreview.com.